You're the writer of your own life, and every action that you take writes the story. Who do you want to be? Who are you in the story of your life? Are you the hero? Are you the villain?
Welcome to the Favorite Self podcast. I like to think of it not as your future self or your best self, but your favorite self. My favorite self that just makes me feel the truest version of me. What lights your favorite self on fire? I'm Carly Ottaway, founder, author, storyteller, and a woman who learned that building a successful life means nothing if it doesn't feel like yours. This podcast is for women who are building businesses, raising families, leading movements, and asking themselves, is this it, or is there more available to me? This is your invitation to come back to yourself. Let's dig in. Okay, we are here. We are doing it. Today's guest is someone I deeply admire. I had to have her on for the launch. And it's not just about the work she does, it's the way that she lives it. MJ Buckner is the founder of the Bean Method. She's a breathwork facilitator, an educator, and best-selling author of the fabulous book, How to Cry, which you absolutely need to read. Her work really sits at the intersection of nervous system regulation and what we've coined in this episode as emotional honesty and really coming back home to your body. Through her teachings, she has helped thousands of people release what they've been holding onto, reconnect with themselves, and lead their lives and businesses from a place of truth, which you know how much I love that. And really what I love most is that MJ doesn't just teach this, she truly embodies it. And I love how this conversation is such a beautiful reminder that sometimes the most powerful tools that we have are actually already within us. I can't wait for you to hear it. And let me know what you think and just soak in all of MJ's amazing, juicy gold nuggets and brilliance. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Favorite Self podcast, my first guest episode, which I am so honored and grateful to have MJ Buckner, formerly Renshaw, now Buckner. Yes, talk about identity shift. We're going to get right into it, but I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I feel honored and grateful too. And that was my first time someone introducing me as MJ Buckner. How special.
I love that. MJ had to tell me how to record my first episode here. So just so grateful to be on this journey together with an experienced podcaster. You have a podcast yourself. And I really love to just start off by going back to the beginning a little bit and talking about how you discovered breathwork to start. We're going to dive deep into that. And when you started really leaning into sharing that gift with others and how the Bean Method came to be.
That's a great question. I think maybe you have this memory, maybe the person who's listening has this memory. I have a memory of doing breathwork before I even knew what it was as a child. So I came from a home that was like pretty chaotic. I had a parent who really struggled with substance abuse. They would come home in the middle of the night and violence would erupt. And I used to lay in my bed and kind of count on my fingers repeatedly over and over again. Inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. And I would do breath holds and all of it just to calm myself down, before whatever. And I just have that memory of that being something that I did even as a kid, just laying in bed, something so intuitive to me. And that carried me through a time in my life that was very tumultuous. Later on in life, after that parent had taken their own life, I was 22. I went and got yoga certified and breathwork certified. That was really exciting and extremely healing for me. And that was it was 2012. That was when I first got certified and then ended up going and doing different things with my life. I went to college and dropped out for marketing. And then I went to school for osteopathy and dropped out and found my way back to breathwork. It just has carried me through so many hard moments of my life, and it's been a common thread. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start a business about this because I know a lot about it and I've used it for so long. So here we are today.
Wow. I don't think that's typical at all, especially for our generation. I feel like I just learned how to breathe in my adult life when I discovered breathwork. So the fact that you can tap into remembering doing that as a child without being led through that just to me reaffirms that this is your unique gift and superpower that you were always meant to pursue.
You're very sweet. You're very sweet. I have met some people who have little things like that. But yeah, I was obsessed with breath holds as a kid. I used to hold my breath all the time, put my hand on my heart and feel how I could feel my heart slow down. And it was fascinating to me and feel like how slow could I get it? It was just so cool that you could control so much of your physiology through the way that you were breathing.
I love that. I love that. And you talked about it being this thread. Can you share a little bit more, maybe even more specifically, if there's been a moment in your motherhood journey or in your entrepreneurship journey where you've had to lean into breathwork in a whole other way and it's helped guide
Oh, yeah.
you through a shift?
Probably everything I've ever done. Before I became a mom and started my own business, I competitively show jumped horses. And if anyone's ever been around horses, you know that they're so sensitive to your nervous system. So I learned very early on that if I could slow down my breathing and bring myself into the present moment, I had more of a chance of getting a red ribbon. So it was very results driven, performance driven for me, but it really worked. I would sit there and I would do my slow breathing. I would listen to certain slow songs and do my slow breathing before I got into the arena, put myself into flow state. And that was probably the first moment where I really brought it into my day to day. As you can hear right now, my kids are actually fighting over something.
I can't hear it.
I don't know if you guys can hear it.
I'm so used to it.
They're fighting hard over something right now. That's the next moment was motherhood. I used it in school too, and dropping out was obviously a really hard decision to make. It was very close to graduation for everything I've dropped out of, but it was just like I have to go now. I just have to go. I cannot spend another month doing this if I know it's not my path. I think there is something beautiful about that and something horrible. Depends on how you look at it. But yeah, the motherhood has been huge. Learning how to just drop into the present moment. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. All I need to do is connect to my own body, connect to my kids, listen to what's going on with them, find the empathy, right? A lot of us tend to think about our own life and how it's disrupting us, but what's going on for them? They are having a hard time. Why? And just finding that space. I always say breathwork is so beautiful because it helps you find the space between something that happens to you and your reaction. Meditation is the same way. How can I be the observer of my own life? You said something really beautiful. We just recorded back to back, and she said something beautiful in my podcast. The episode's going to come out later than this one, I'm sorry. But she said, you get to write your own story, because Carly was talking about her story. One of the things I grew up with my dad telling us, you're the writer of your own life. And every action that you take writes the story. Who do you want to be? Who are you in the story of your life? Are you the hero? Are you the villain? What choices do you make? And we weren't religious, and it was almost like our religious teaching of just understanding that there is a fundamental right. You know it in your body. I teach my kids that now, that you get to write your story, make your choice. Who are you going to be? You have the choice to show up in your life as who you want to be. It's so beautiful. When I heard you say that, I was like, yes. But in motherhood, and then lastly, the entrepreneurial journey, anyone who's done it, it's indescribable. It will find every insecurity, worry, limiting mindset that you could ever possibly have. It is insane. It is self-development, but through like a time machine. It's wild. The same with motherhood. All of that comes out. It's been, this thread in my life that I've been able to come back to and realize, just come back into my body and back into the present moment. You don't need much more than that. There's no steps really beyond that.
So powerful. And I love that you brought up the horse analogy, because I'm thinking of, how we're stepping into the year of the fire horse and the Chinese zodiac. And I think there's an assumption with that it's all about this like galloping energy and momentum and the action taking, which as an Aries, I'm here for that energy. But I also believe actually the superpower of this is more about tapping into horses are so intuitive, and really actually tapping into more of that energy and slowing down and being present in your body and actually letting your intuition guide you and seeing your sensitivities as superpowers as well. And so I would love to pivot and talk about your book. You wrote a beautiful book called How to Cry, published last June. And I read it at such an incredible time because it was the summer before I published my book. And I just was feeling all the feelings, and it was so permission giving and like really letting me go through that, own kind of healing journey before stepping into this new visibility that I was stepping into with the book and the vulnerability that comes with that. And it also has a ripple effect on your own growth and healing as writing a book and sharing it does. But can you share a little bit more about, I think to start actually, what would be some of those tips that you would give for how we can really stop living so much of our lives from our heads, from our logical minds, and tap into those sensations in the body and the emotions, and how we can teach our kids to do that as well?
That's a very good question. I think I'm not a child educator expert by any means, but one thing that I've noticed that works really well in my life is just to be about it. If you just be about it, they'll follow. I was the same way as a kid. If my parents had told me to do something, but they weren't doing it, I could see that in a heartbeat. But as soon as they modeled something to me, it showed me that that's how you probably should be. My parents were really big on us reading and having physical exercise. They both read and they both ran, and I run and I exercise. So be who you want them to be. If you want them to be people who follow their dreams, you better be following your dreams. It's hard sometimes. I'm a mom. I'm a normal person. I'm not like up on some podium all the time. I'm telling my kids to get off screens, and I got to get off screens. So that would be my little ellipses on children. But as for ourselves, I think first and foremost, appealing to the mind might be just to explain that we don't know everything. What we know is so limited. What our brain perceives of the world around us is so limited. And what we understand is incredibly limited. Just taking, I specialize with our breathwork certification. I specialize with anatomy and physiology. We are learning new organs like recently.
Wow.
So we're pretty rudimentary in our understanding of the world. I like to quote, I think it was 1890s, the British Scientific Society put out a announcement, and they said, we have found all of science. Science is over. We've figured it all out. There's nowhere to go from here. That mindset has kind of like been brought along with science a little bit, where it's like, what else is there to do? We know it all. When it is a method and a becoming, we are discovering so much about the world. So just start there, like a humbling of like, how much do I know about myself and my own life and what's right? Do I know that that's the right path? Do I know that this is an actual capital T truth disappointment? Or was it burnt toast theory? Did the wrong thing happen to set me on the right path? We don't actually know. And when we can get into and start to play around with the idea that our body might hold some sort of intelligence, that the body might know, maybe hold the score, and you start to see that it is true. I don't know, maybe someone's been in a relationship where your body was just rejecting that person. That's a good indicator. And then you come to realize like, oh, my body knew this whole time. Like when we listen to the intelligence of the body, it can take us on paths that are incredible, that our mind could have never. So I would just try to listen, tune in. How does my body feel about this person? How does my body feel about this situation? There's all the advice that I can give people on how to discern between fear and our intuition, wanting to stay small and listening to that voice. That's not, I think the only way to know is to try. Just pick one. Pick a path and you'll see there's no wrong way. One of my favorite books, I'm so bad with authors' names, I'm so sorry, but it's The Game of Life and How to Play It. And maybe I'm getting the title wrong too, but we can put that in the show notes. It really highlights that you would get so anxious about making the wrong choice or doing the wrong thing. And it's a prison. Just take the action, try something, and it might work and it might not. And then you can try something else. You can start over. You can realize that's not what you wanted, and that's okay. You can get divorced. You can shut down the business. You can get a new 9 to 5. You can get a different 9 to 5. You can do so many things in this life. You can drop out 3 times in a row. That's what I did.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt anyone except my mom a little bit.
I often say that deciding is often the hardest part. And for me, my human design has given me so much permission to learn how to tap into my body because I'm a sacral authority. So I've really had to practice and train myself to tap into my body when I understand what is that heck yes energy. And exactly like you said, when I'm hanging out with certain people, how do I feel both when I'm there with them and their energy and afterwards? Am I just like completely exhausted and depleted? Or do I feel like my cup was filled from that experience as well? And just really paying attention and training ourselves in that. And, it's the beauty of knowing that we are just a work in progress and our healing journey continues. I remember a moment before, like I was new into entrepreneurship, was not a mom yet. And I remember thinking like, I've done the work on myself. I know myself well. I'm good. Meanwhile, had a whole untapped world of healing and reparenting and so many wounds that I wasn't, and subconscious beliefs I wasn't even aware of that I've since tapped into. And getting out of my head and into my body has been such a huge part of that, and breath work and meditation and cold plunging too, like I was sharing. Can you share a little bit more about just the process? I love hearing how you share the science behind it too, and but just kind of in your own language, because you explain it so well also for people who may not have the scientific background. But just a little bit more about how breath work becomes this powerful doorway of healing and emotional release, and just how it works so people can really understand it if they're not as familiar.
That's a big question. Oh, I'm like, yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with what breathwork is. Breathwork is just consciously connecting to your own breath. That's it. It's nothing fancy. There's so many techniques. They've been branded and rebranded again. I always tell people there's 4, ingredients to breathwork. Exhale, inhale, hold on empty, hold on full. You can do alternate nostril breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, whatever, but that's kind of it. It's not that complicated. Once you learn the basic physiology of what happens when you do each of those 4 things, it's pretty easy to figure out, how you can breathe to aid yourself through your life. This could be breathing day to day, or it could be breathing in a specific time frame in order to elicit something, whatever that is. So some examples of that would be, I refer to different breath work as just how it affects the nervous system. So we call them parasympathetic or sympathetic breath work, or apnea, which is just the lack of breathing breath holds. Sympathetic breathing is amazing. You maybe seen it online. People, they're hyperventilating in different methods. There's several different techniques for it. They're all having the same effect. And they are laying on the floor. They're crying. They're letting it out. What's the science behind that? There's different theories. Some people think that you have endogenous DMT that's released and it helps you have this crazy spiritual experience, experiencing your own birth or meeting God or whatever that should be. Other people simply just have, there's a theory called the exhaustion theory, where all the walls you've built up in your mind just kind of crumble down because you're so tired. You can't possibly filter out the true emotion that you hold day to day with each thing. So suddenly, something triggers a thought of your past. You don't have those walls anymore, and you find yourself feeling that grief or feeling that sadness. So, that's a great breathwork practice if you are constipated with some sort of emotion that you need to get out and it's holding you back. You have something that's happened in your life and you are still not quite over it. Not that we're ever going to be over these things, but, I heard a woman on an astrology podcast said that if you're above 30 and you're still blaming your parents, you got to grow up. And it was like hard for me to hear because I still had things that was my parents' fault, but it was good medicine. I'm an adult now. That's the Saturn return, right? Like we get to decide, who am I and how am I going to be on this planet? Yes, that happened. Who am I going to be because of it? And that sympathetic breathwork is amazing for that, really breaking patterns. It really can take your nervous system and make a big change. I've seen it do amazing things for the vagus nerve. Anyone who's interested in polyvagal theory, it can really help you go through the full process of processing something. Sometimes with trauma, we can get stuck somewhere. You can get stuck and freeze, fawn, fight. We know people who are kind of stuck in that nervous system. Go through the full process. Let yourself experiencing it. Sometimes when we think we're in those states, what you want to do is calm yourself down. That can add a vasovagal response, but that can be really uncomfortable. Those people typically do not like meditating. You sit them down in the room and they got to listen to their thoughts helicopter around them. It's hell. Get them breathing. Go breathe. Go have a big response. And then on the other side, we've got parasympathetic breathing. Accesses the parasympathetic nervous system. Not describing the nervous system for you guys at all. I'm sorry. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. Parasympathetic is your rest and digest. And so good for day to day. So good for people with any sort of chronic illness. You can bring yourself as far out of that stress response as you could possibly get. So healing. There's no rules for this. If you're someone with chronic illness symptoms and you're thinking, I want to do a sympathetic, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. Do you need to go get more stressed to get less stressed? That's fine. There's no rules. There's no one path is the healing path for everybody. So, parasympathetic, lengthening your exhales. It's fantastic. You do that for 5 minutes before bed, you're 15% more likely to have a better night's sleep, which is like, that's 5 minutes, and everybody struggles with sleep. So that's a little bit of the science behind breathwork as what it is. So it is the remote control for your nervous system. What does your nervous system control? Everything. Your hormones, your immune system, your thoughts. Anyone who's listening, I'm sure you can think of a time where you were overstimulated and you were maybe in a sympathetic state. What were your thoughts like? I can't do this. I'm ruminating. This is someone else's fault. I'm a victim. Not good thoughts, right? You put yourself into a calm state. Maybe you're on the beach or you're looking out in the mountains, or swans are floating over you behind your house. What are your thoughts like? Anything is possible. I love my life. I feel so grateful, right? Sometimes we believe those thoughts. But when you learn breath work and you learn to get into the body, you understand that those thoughts, none of those thoughts matter. They are all just a product of your neurology and your nervous system and what state it's in. You don't have to believe it. Anything that says I can't, this isn't for me, whatever, it's all baloney. I think that's the benefit of things like meditation and breath work, is that you really become the observer of your own life. You're not so in it, reacting to everything all the time. Like, you're just kind of like, oh, I wonder why that happened, or why did I do that? Why did they say that? What's going on in their life? You just get more naturally curious, and life becomes a game in the best way possible.
Yes. Oh, that was such a beautiful explanation, and so empowering to know that we have this tool. I talk about, you hinted at having the pen to be able to rewrite our story at any time, and we hold the pen. But the fact that we have a tool like our breath that we can lean on, and in any part of the day. Right now, if you're driving wherever you are, just take that reminder to take that deep inhale and exhale. And maybe you haven't even thought about how you're breathing yet today, because it's so natural for us to go throughout our day without, if we haven't actually built the muscle and trained the muscle, to not even think twice about it. But such a powerful way to shift. It doesn't require a whole lot, like you said, the 5 minutes that can actually change a full night's sleep.
There's a caveat of that, like, life is stimulating of our different nervous system states, I'll say. And like, I do believe that there's some things that we can't breathwork out of. There's certain situations, different people, or different work environments. And it's our job, to decide what we want and what we don't want out of that. But breathwork can help you make the decision, at least.
And you share so many beautiful case study examples in your book of how your clients and people around you have used breathwork to really change their lives and heal through their trauma. And I cannot recommend this book enough. Everyone needs to grab it. And one thing we were talking about earlier was just the importance of like truth and sharing our story and being vulnerable. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that in terms of that emotional honesty. How do we build that emotional honesty with ourselves to work through those walls that we have built up, whether it's someone who maybe has not felt safe to cry and express their emotions? And can you give any insight or any examples on building that emotional honesty?
I love the term emotional honesty. That's very good. I've never thought of it that way. You are being honest and having integrity with what you're feeling. I mean, I look at it, I come from the health and wellness world, so I definitely look at it through the lens of your body and your physiology and what's going on. And, we know now that, for example, suppressing any emotion, sadness, guilt, jealousy, anger, that's going to lead to chronic inflammation in your body. That could stop there, or it could keep going for decades and you end up with a disease, right? We've linked emotional suppression with cancer, with type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, big time for women, all cause mortality. Like, we're talking almost, like, if you look at the US, like, what's killing people? You can tie emotions into almost all of it. The only one is accidents, right? But they include overdoses and addiction into accidents. So I would even say almost all of them. So, not to fearmonger, but expressing your emotions should be thought of as like your life depends on it, because it does. Not just in terms of the quantity of life that you get, but the quality. It's going to determine how intimate your connection is with yourself, your children, your partner, your friends, your work, your coworkers. If you are not honest about who you are and what you're feeling and you're able to do it in a calm, healthy way. I mean, you're allowed to be angry, scream, whatever. I mean, a kind way. You're going to be alone forever. No one will see you who you are. And it's a sad place to be. And I'm speaking to this because I was that person. I wasn't born completely connected to my emotions. I come from a household where, like, temper tantrum, you're going to your room. And it was not okay. Too dramatic, you're too sensitive. I had to really shut down in order to be accepted by the people in my world. My family is very British. So we had to, you're not allowed to show that stuff. It was impolite. It probably wasn't until I was 27, 28, I started opening up again to who am I? And like you said, my favorite authentic self. I'm incredibly dramatic and I'm like very spicy. And I love that part of me. I'm so passionate. We went around the dinner table the other night. We were all saying our favorite things about each other. My husband just said something so earnest to me. I've had this, my husband is so grounded. He's like a human oak tree. He's so kind. I've never seen him be unkind. And I can be very spicy. And he said, I'm really grateful for mommy because she gets so passionate about everything going on in the world. You care so deeply. And I just felt so seen in that moment because it's not, he saw me. Like, I really do want the best for everybody. And I don't want, any injustice in the world. And he really saw me. So I don't remember what your question was, but yeah, being sensitive is a good thing.
I feel like you took it full circle. The benefit that comes from that emotional honesty when you have that relationship where you're able to show up in your own emotional honesty with yourself and with that other person and truly step into that authentic favorite self, and then be able to be that mirror your husband was to
Yeah.
that back to you and to really make you feel seen in that way. And I think there's part of that, like you said, if you're suppressing and you're holding it back, like, do you ever actually feel truly seen? Do you truly see yourself? Or, do you truly actually feel like you know yourself if you don't feel like you can express yourself in all ways? And I love how you share, the examples of our kids in that too. I often share about how our kids are such powerful, tiny mirrors, like you're saying, about teaching them to see us being and doing the things that are important to us. If you want your kids to be readers, let them see you reading. If you want them to express their feelings, let them see you crying. I remember kind of that first time my daughter saw me cry. And I had that moment where I was like, oh, shoot, should she see me this way? And then I caught myself and I'm like, of course she should see me this way. I am feeling a real human emotion. And we got to bond through it. Actually, she was like 2 years old and she came over and gave me a Band-Aid for my heart. She said, here, mommy, here's a Band-Aid for your heart because I know your heart is sad and I want it to feel better. Just by us being willing to be open and vulnerable in that expression. So powerful. So we talked about one of the themes of the big theme of this podcast is that favorite self identity. And I'm so curious about how we dive in a little bit more into how this emotional release, this experience, is part of rewriting your identity.
I think, for me, it's so tied up in emotions. When I think back to my favorite self, when you said that, I definitely pictured me in preschool or kindergarten before life had really tried to decide who I should be. And I was so confident. And, people would use the euphemism bossy because I'm a woman, but I was a leader. Every single group of kids that I was around, I just was like, and you're doing this, and then we're gonna do that. And I was so comfortable in that. And I would do anything I wanted to do. I'm like the textbook willful child, textbook spicy child, all the, again, euphemisms that parents use. And I really love that about myself. I've always known what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And somewhere along the way, I think I tried to become more palatable for people, in part for safety. Going around as a woman like that can have reactions from certain men with certain beliefs, I'll say. So, in part for safety, and just in part because I was tired of being misunderstood. You know who you are and you know your heart, right? And when you grow up in a society that's, thinks differently about women than it does about men, you try to make yourself a little bit more palatable. I remember in university, I was saying something and a professor just was like, can we stop? Just pause. Can you try before you say something not to say, I think, or maybe I'm wrong? And I was like, oh, thank you, because I know I'm right. But I have to tiptoe around so many people who are insecure. And yeah, I think, I'm blonde. There's all the things that you grow up with. In part, that's privilege. In part, it's horrible. And, the prison of how could you know that? Even still to this day, I have a 7-figure business. We post something online of me talking about science, and in come the men who have never studied science in their lives. And I think in part, a lot of it just has to be because I don't look like I should know to them.
Mm.
They want to see me on OnlyFans, and that's it. Yeah, so I think it's just really coming into being okay with being misunderstood and being okay with people not knowing my intentions or my heart, and knowing that, like, I know my heart and it's good and that's enough.
Yes.
It's being okay with being disliked.
That's such a big one. I love this. You also quoted your husband when we were recording for your episode. I'm forgetting what the exact quote was because I always paraphrase in all the wrong ways.
If you spot it, you got it.
Yes. And so I'm immediately thinking of, I can relate. I was the bossy girl on the playground too, and, had that label, and that made me feel like that was wrong. My leadership qualities were a negative thing, and had to do my own work in that. But now I see my daughter and what a little leader she is. And, there's times for sure where I remind myself, like, these skills that she's building that are testing me right now in my motherhood are so good for her. And it's so important for me to do the work on myself so that I can nurture those in her and know a way to help guide her and give her the right tools and resources. But there's also times when I know that her assertiveness makes other people uncomfortable. And I don't rush to fix their discomfort. And I don't want her to see me rushing to fix their discomfort or teaching her that she needs to change to make them comfortable. And I think you and I, we have Leo is a fire sign, and we have that energy. We were talking about that too, how we're less on the people pleaser side of the pendulum and more on the kind of be seen as that brass, like bold truth teller, which makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially when they haven't done that work within themselves and understood their own truth and been able to stand confidently in knowing themselves and their own authenticity, right? So then they're automatically feeling uncomfortable seeing you show up that way.
I saw it so much in dating
Mm-hmm.
because I would just show up as me dating, and I could literally see men either lean in like she is really herself, they would like it, and then I would see men like be repulsed because they did not want someone like me. It's such a gift to dating to be authentic. Like, don't pretend to be someone who you're not, or else you're gonna end up in a miserable.
Right? Can we all just agree not to waste each other's time with the performance and the pretending? I mean, I can imagine dating now that it's a whole other world out there. I'd love to hear, you mentioned the success of your business and kind of mentioned it from a revenue standpoint, which is obviously a big metric that we're used to defining success by. But the reason that you are such a powerful expander to me is the way that you have built this success financially in your life to provide for yourself and your family while also being such a present mom to your kids and, not burning out and working at all hours and really being boundaried in your schedule. And you are that proof that I needed to know that you can have both and that both are possible. And so I would love if you shared some more about, to me, it's always when you're stepping into a next level of growth and success, especially in entrepreneurship. And if you're a mom too, how do you train yourself and use maybe these tools to hold both motherhood and the successful business that you've created?
I'm still figuring it out. But I do know one of my skills is that I do not micromanage anything. I don't micromanage my kids. I don't micromanage my husband, my home, my business, nothing. I don't want to. I will set up the SOPs for whatever it is, whether it's the kids and their day and whatever. But I just trust that everybody's going to have the experience they're meant to have. Even in our business, the revenue side, it's been, some months have been amazing and some months last July, I fired everybody. It wasn't right. We didn't have people who were right on the team. It was a culture that was getting not good. There was a lot of I was feeling so much resentfulness that I just let them go. And we started brick by brick from the bottom up again. And it took time, right? So be willing to change everything. And which is so freeing too, if you want to start a business, because everybody thinks you've got to pick the perfect thing because it's got to be the perfect thing for the next 20 years. No, You're going to change everything about your business 10 times over. You'll rebrand, you'll change your website, you'll start a podcast and stop a podcast, you'll start it again. You can do whatever you want. And I think that's a gift. It's hard for me to talk about this too without giving credit to my husband. He's so Aquarian. He really just lets me do whatever I want, which is amazing because I'm Leo and I love doing whatever I want. He's always behind me, just either cheering me on or literally doing our spreadsheets. So he's very, very helpful. But yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is don't hold on to everything so tightly. Just it'll be okay.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're worried about or what we're holding on to, we don't have to.
Where do you think you've developed those skills, those soft skills maybe, or just the courage to pivot and really recognize, because I'm curious at that time when you fired everyone, if others would have looked at your business at that time and been like, oh my gosh, this is like so successful.
We were making the most money we'd ever made. It was I have certain chronic illnesses that I don't really like to talk about, but one of them is mast cell activation syndrome and POTS. I've had them since I was a teen. A lot of people know what they are now thanks to COVID. But when I get too stressed out, those symptoms come into my life, and it was like, my body was just shutting down. It was too many things that were not aligned. You make a choice. You can make a choice sometimes. Like, do I want this much extra money, or do I want to be, in my case, passing out? So the choice is easy for me. I don't want to have more money at the sacrifice of my health and well-being, at the sacrifice of me as a mother, at the sacrifice of me as a wife, at the sacrifice of my enjoyment of life. And I think that I can have all those things together. So I will try to find a way to do that. And if I go down the wrong path, I will turn back around and start again. And we're not stuck to anything.
Yeah, another powerful example of really being in tune with your body when your mind could convince you otherwise, to keep going, to stick it out, but knowing that your body was sending you that powerful message that you can't go on like this. I'm curious too if you can share a little bit more about how you design both your business and motherhood intentionally to work so beautifully together. And also, did you always have that belief that this kind of life and business was possible for you? Or was there a pivotal moment where you had to work on really developing that belief?
I grew up with a mom. My dad wasn't really around and didn't help with the bills or anything. So he officially left when I was 8, but I had a single mom and she worked her butt off. My mom had a dream of us having a big, beautiful house on property with an apple orchard and buying me my own horse and me going to competitions. And with all that comes money, right? Like, she needed money. And I love this about my mom is that she went out there and she made it happen. She started when I was a kid as working as in an interior design in a new model home center. So the houses they were building, she would help you pick out your floors and cupboards. And then my mom became a real estate agent, then a broker. Then she started her own custom house building company and built her own custom house and moved us to the country. And she's just my mom's very driven. There were downsides to that. We did not have a lot of weekends together. My mom didn't get home every night until 8:30. A lot of times I was already asleep. So she missed out a lot on our younger years. I know that she regrets that as we talk about it, because she sees me home. She's with our kids all the time. She's Nana. And she's like, oh, I wish that I had, but there was no other way at the time. I took that knowledge of like, okay, I like her manifestation. She's a manifester. I like that she had a dream. I like that she chased that. I see her regret. How can I learn from that? When I met my husband, like you, I didn't really know if I wanted kids. I met him and I want your kids. I want your baby. And at the time I was in college to be an osteopath. I was about to graduate and I dropped out because, in that job, the only money you make is the hours you're in office. If you want to make enough money to qualify to buy a house here in Toronto, you are working around the clock. You're probably working 13-hour days every single day. And that's like a maybe. So I saw examples of it. At the time I was doing To Be Magnetic, Lacey Phillips' work. She's a projector. Her and I have a lot of astrological similarities, and she was building a business that was comfortable for her chronic health so that she could have a motherhood and be at home. And I just saw someone doing it. And I was like, I'm going to do it too. So I started our certification. I didn't do a business exactly like hers, but I started our certification. I started our membership. And it offered me the freedom to do exactly what I want to do, what I'm interested in, what I enjoy, what lights me up, and also not have to work those 12-hour days to make it all necessary.
So beautiful. The power of that expander in your life, the fact that you had it as in your mom, teaching you so much about what you wanted, but then also what you wanted to do differently, right? We can have both. And I think seeing those examples of both are so important. And just the power of remembering that our parents are breaking their own cycles and we're in the positions that we are because of their own path as well.
100%. I know it bothers me so much when people are like, "I'm the cycle breaker." I'm like, "You mean to tell me that your mom raised you exactly how she was raised?"
Yeah.
Maybe in some cases, but, like, I watched my grandmother didn't even have her own bank account, and
Mhm.
she was married to someone where, like, questionable behavior happening there, and she had no exit, and my mom watched that and said, "Well, I want my own exit." So, of course, she pendulated to the other end of being hyper independent. I don't ever wanna rely on someone like that, and there's beauty in that. She freed us, and now I get to choose maybe a middle third way of I do like my husband. I wanna be with him. I wanna be connected with him, and I also am my own person at the same time, and I have my own dreams, and I have my own things that I wanna do, and they are insane, but they are what they are.
Yeah. I love it. I also am a big fan of Lacey Phillips and To Be Magnetic. I've been part of that membership. I actually just had the opportunity to guest on Expanded
Oh my god.
podcast and share my story. So yeah, that's coming out around the same time as this episode, I think. That's where I found meditation, which, was coincided with my breathwork journey as well. And just the power we have to manifest our wildest dreams. And I think, that's the beauty of entrepreneurship being such a wild journey in personal development, which we talked about too. And one of the biggest lessons in that is learning to understand and process your emotions and to be able to lead from your body. So, can you tell me a little bit about just speak to how nervous system regulation can really shift the way that someone is leading their business and the success that they're calling in?
Yeah, I think, just to make it complicated, one of my favorite books is called A Course in Miracles. And if you've read it, I love you. If you haven't, I love you. But it's this huge textbook. It kind of looks like the Bible. And it's channeled. This is going to sound so cuckoo if you guys are not into this sort of stuff, but it's a Cambridge professor that started channeling Jesus one day. And then, boom, this whole textbook comes. And it's all about how in life, the only thing that you have to do is choose love over fear. That's it. And it's so freeing. And it's so rooted in the nervous system because our amygdala, which is our fear center of the brain, is so connected to our sympathetic nervous system. If you are running around sympathetic all the time, you are having thoughts that the world is a place to be feared. It's a bad place. I mean, look at the news, right? That is hijacking the sympathetic nervous system and the amygdala because we are designed to look out for fear to keep ourselves alive. It knows that, so it grabs our attention that way and makes you really believe that it's only bad things happening in the world ever, when in reality, there's miracles happening. Children are being born. How come that's not in the news, right? That's a miracle. So I would just say, the beauty of breath work is that you can bring yourself out of that state and into a state of love, possibility, miracles, and hope. And then move from there and watch what happens. It's wild.
That's what I love about your book is the simplicity of the power of our breath to truly heal the world and change the world. And it starts with us. But we do have so much power over healing ourselves and therefore what we're able to demonstrate for our kids and our families. We have a lot more power than we realize because it's easy to feel like, a little bit of that sense of hopelessness with everything going on in the world. And we're so exposed to it every single day. But really understanding that doing this work is the key to change in your community and in the world at large. So powerful. I also just wanted to talk about how, growth in that identity shift and entrepreneurship is so much related to capacity. And I'm really curious about your thoughts and perspective on how, or if you think emotional capacity is one of the biggest factors.
Oh my God, yes, 100%. You cannot be someone who's getting wrapped up in everything. You're going to eventually manage a team, probably. You got to be the leader. Anyone who's had a boss, think about your worst boss. What was their number one problem? They had no control over their emotions. They spilled over onto everybody else. They blamed everybody else. They got upset and emotional about everything going on in the business, which is like, does that happen to me? Yes. Am I choosing to put it on other people? No. So you're going to have things that come up that are hard and frustrating. You take a moment, you let yourself feel it, and you move on with your life. Don't ruminate on it. We can't change things. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose clients. You're going to lose whatever. You're going to have someone not understand you online. You're going to, whatever, all the things that are going to happen. It's like the Spider-Man thing with great, what is it? Responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
It's the same thing. If you want a big business, if you want big impact, there's going to be responsibility on you, and you're going to be misunderstood, like all those different things. And like, think of them as indicators for success. If someone is really triggered by your work, good. You're speaking against a paradigm that doesn't work, right? Like the way we live right now does not work. We have genocide, war, horror, things I'm not even going to mention coming out. So why do I want to make myself into someone who would agree with everything right now? I'm going to speak out against things. And if my version of reality bumps up against that, good. I don't want that to exist. I think you have to get in touch with your emotions and know what's yours and what's not. And then take care of what's yours, or as my husband say, sweep your side of the street and move on.
Yeah. So beautiful and powerful, MJ. I just feel like I could talk to you forever. And I feel like this was exactly the right message that I wanted to kick off this podcast with. So thank you just for the way that you show up so authentically and give other people permission to do that, because you've built a brand where you've been through the full spectrum, I know, of using your voice and receiving both sides of that, the beauty of people and also people's own triggers and insecurities that have been reflected back from that as well. And I can imagine all the ways your own capacity has had to stretch to hold that and hold the layers of that. If you had just one message to share with the woman who is listening and who really is feeling so pulled to create something meaningful in her business and her career, while also being the present, thriving mom that she wants to be for her kids and supportive partner in her family, what would be that one kind of key takeaway or message you want to leave her with?
There's nothing you need to change. Just being you in your full love being right now, and just move from there. You're just perfect the way you are. Everything that's happened has brought you here. And instead of thinking of us as something that needs to be fixed or changed, it's just being with yourself right now and moving from love.
Beautiful. And tell us, how do we find you, connect with you? What's the best place, and to get your book as well?
Instagram at Being Method Breathwork. There's a link to the book there. I've got a website, beingmethod.ca. We have an app, Being Method Breathwork app. There's free breathwork on there if you want to try. Our most popular one, Emotional Clearing's on there. We get hundreds of DMs and emails about it. And yeah, we certify people in breathwork. That's kind of our specialty. That's our world.
Amazing. And just actually one final question to wrap with, and I know you mentioned you might need a journal on this, but what does your favorite self look like in this season of your life and business?
I think me right now. I've been on a journey to come back to myself the last couple of years, and it's been fun.
I love it. You gotta have fun with it.
Yeah.
Well, energy is important too. We take it too seriously. I think, your favorite self is so much tapping into the fun side of childhood and the magic of that and all the possibility of that and the passions that lit you up, having that connection to breath from such a young age. And now what you've been able to create of that passion and fire within you is just so beautiful. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and all of your incredible insights. I just think you're so brilliant, the way that you share and talk about breathwork too, and just encouraging that emotional honesty in ourselves too. So thank you for being my first guest.
Thanks for having me on.
And everyone, be sure.
Thanks for listening.
Yay. Be sure to connect with MJ on Instagram, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to the Favorite Self podcast. If this episode stirred something in you, there's a reason for it. If you could take a moment to share with a friend, someone who's also building something brave, that would mean so much to me. Better yet, leave a review. It helps this message reach even more women who are ready to lead differently. And before you go, remember this: your favorite self is already within you, waiting to be heard. See you next time.